Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Norm Schriever, your co-host on the Tea and Mortgage podcast featuring John Coleman of JC Mortgages in Ireland. This is episode number 3 of the Tea and Mortgage podcast. And before we kick off, we just wanted to thank everyone for the support. It's been really fun starting this podcast, talking about property and mortgage and just life in Ireland. And through the first 2 episodes, we've gotten a lot of support, a lot of followers and listens and people sharing. So we really appreciate it. And we hope you get a lot out of this podcast. Thanks again. And without further ado, here's the Tea and Mortgage podcast. All right, John, now on the Tea and Mortgage podcast, it's the beginning of March already. And every month, right at the beginning of the month, you put out a wonderful recap of the property and mortgage market in Ireland for the previous month. And we have that on YouTube. You email it out to clients and friends. It's on social media. But on the podcast today, we were going to do a recap of your recap. So let's see what you got for us.
I love your use of words, Norm. A recap of a recap. Okay, well, I'm going to keep this like the month of February. I'm going to keep this very short. Obviously, as I've been going on about the interest rates going up now for maybe 3 or 4 months, but one would have thought logically that demand might have been affected. As it stands, 2 months into 2023. It hasn't been the case. My number of applications that I put into the banks this year has gone up by 20% in the first 2 months of last year. The number of inquiries that are coming at me, it just doesn't stop, right? But I am, and this is the point I keep making, but I am telling people who are starting to plan now, they need to be planning on the basis that interest rates might go up by 2%, because if that has happened in the next 6 months, the banks will want to see that the person would have been able to meet those repayments. So that's so important. On another kind of related point in relation to the demand, I'm having clients tell me that they're getting involved in bidding wars still. So this is 2023. Interest rates have gone up by almost 3%, and there's still bidding wars going on. So it kind of my point has always been that I didn't see prices falling this year, based on the gap that was there between supply and demand, and I still don't see that. But demand will have to will dampen a little bit, purely because the banks won't lend the people as much money. So if the people don't have enough much money, they can't get involved in bidding wars. But as it stands, I'm certainly going to predict the prices will not fall this year. That is something. But I would hope that they would just kind of stay at a level so that people at least can make it happen, you know?
Yeah, normalize a little bit and cool down and how about for your favorite chestnut, which is bank service?
I was hoping I was actually going to leave that out of the recap of the recap.
Oh no, that's the good stuff. No. Go on your epic rant now.
No, remember, the banks ultimately pay me, so I have to. I don't want to kill them, but at the same time, they are obliged to provide a certain service, and currently, it's fair to say that that's not happening with most of them. Like some of the banks are taking between 5 to 6 weeks to say yes, others are kind of taking 2 to 2.5 weeks. Now, I am being told that work is being done, but I won't say I'll believe it when I see it, but it's maybe how I feel, you know.
There's room for improvement. There
is definitely room for improvement, and it's in everyone's interest. It's in the bank's interest. It's in the client's interest. It's in my interest. So they are certainly. It's not something that they're doing deliberately. It is a sort of a the number of banks that have been reduced has certainly normally the level of business that's coming at them is basically much higher than it would have been if there were other banks out there. But what they haven't done is resourced up to actually cater for that demand, you know?
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, yeah, thank you for that wonderful recap of the recap. And if people would like
are we going to call it that every month now? No,
every month. I love it. Every month. The joke won't get old. And if people actually want the real recap, of course, they could email you, message you. They could go to your social media. We post it, YouTube. So it's a great video, short video that you put out to help people every month. So I encourage people to find that. All right, John. Now we are currently recording this on the second day of March, and hopefully it's on the airwaves very soon. And so I wanted to get your take on what people have to look forward to in March there in Ireland.
Yeah, no, Norm, in relation to March, well, the days are getting longer, which is always great. You tend to find more houses come onto the market because, again, people selling feel that the house is going to look better with more light, and the psychology of selling comes to play there in that case. But in March in general in Ireland, well, I'm sure you're well aware as an American, Patrick's Day, and we'll have a lot of Americans will come over just for that weekend. It can be carnage, to be brutally honest with you. I tend to stay away from it.
Smart man.
I think I'm getting too mature. It's kind of boring, really. But in my youth, I would have been right smack in the middle of it. But so that's coming up, and obviously, the 17th of March, and it's a Friday. This year, which is always great, means it's a nice long weekend. It's not broken up in the middle. But yeah, no, it's very hectic. You'll have from about the 12th, you'll have people coming over for St. Patrick's. I actually have a couple of friends coming over to stay with me myself, and I'm hoping they don't want to stay too long, because a bit like you were mentioning earlier on, before this, that you had friends visiting you. Well, I don't 2 nights is I can handle. I think they're talking about coming for 4 or 5. I'm thinking I have a job to do as well, So
you know what's so funny? There's a saying my mom always used to say, and she's German, right? And she used to say, I'll paraphrase, but sounds better in German, but something like house guests.
Give us your German version of it.
Oh, I can't even say it. But in English, it's something like house guests and fish start smelling after 3 days.
Okay, I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, that's why I'm hoping it's 2, because I think that's the perfect number,
Yeah. But I didn't realize also that people actually, and a lot of Americans actually come to Ireland just for St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, it's incredible. Because, and I'm going to make fun of the American nationality here, so I hope you're going to pick.
Please do.
Here you'd be you'd meet an American. Yeah, no, I'm Irish. Oh, you're Irish, huh? Where were you born? I know my mother's brother, sister, and grandfather, he comes from Ireland. So suddenly everyone wants to claim to have a certain bit of Irish and that they're Irish heritage. So it's a kind of a common.
That's definitely
I have no idea
thing.
why.
No, that's definitely a U.S. thing in general. Like,
yeah.
You're Italian, you're this, you're, it's not, no one says, oh, I'm American. Like that 0% of the time people say that. It really refers to like your parents or grandparents or your lineage, your ethnicity,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So would you, when you're asked, do you bring up Germany?
I'm an alien. That's what I say. I don't know I'm a citizen of the world. I don't know where I belong, where I'm from, but I got beamed down here just to help you on this podcast, I think, huh?
Oh, well, listen, I'm thanking the man above.
But you know what's funny with St. Patrick's Day in the US, it's a big deal.
They paint the rivers green and stuff like that as well.
Yeah,
don't they?
there's sometimes they put, like, Chicago, I know, does that, where the whole river is green. And then some restaurants, do green food with food color. There's green beer. People are dressing up in green. You could pinch someone if they're not wearing green or something like that. But it's also a big drunken fest with the
absolutely
with the youth, and they don't even know what it stands for. They know it has something to do with Ireland, but it's like an excuse just to get sloppy drunk, I think.
Yeah, party excuses is fair enough. But in effect, you'd find a lot of American students making it over to Ireland for that weekend, and for that reason, not because they feel they're Irish, but because it's a great excuse and it's a great party time over here.
Well, I know there's a lot more to the culture and the life and everything in Ireland than just the cliche of St. Patrick's Day. So what else do you guys have going on in March that you're looking forward to?
Oh God, you've got me there.
Or is that it?
No, there's a lot of rugby going on at the moment. Ireland at the minute have a very, very good rugby. I don't know, it's a sport you're actually familiar with, Norm. But they're the actual number 1 country in the world in rugby, and that's over New Zealand, South Africa. England, France, and there's a competition called the Six Nations. It looks like Ireland will do what they call the Grand Slam. Now that might be getting ahead of myself. No, I'm more of a Gaelic fan than a rugby fan, but at the same time, I'd still watch it.
Yeah.
And, there's a World Cup coming up this year whereby, well, there'll be people counting their chickens before they hatch. That's for sure. But that is currently going on. I think on St. Patrick's Day, Ireland are playing. On the 18th, the Saturday, Ireland are actually playing England in Dublin, and if they win that game, they'll have won the kind of the Grand Slam, which is a kind of a rarity. It might get done once every 12, 13 years. Ireland up until recently had only done it once. I think they've done it maybe twice in the last 10 years, but throughout history, there wasn't something that was really achieved. So they're in a good place.
That's incredible. And I've been exposed to rugby enough. Let's say that I have a ton of friends who are Australian or, living abroad for a long time. A lot of places I go, there's only like cricket and Aussie rules and rugby on TV, much to my chagrin. But, but I remember as far back as 99 being in New Zealand and the All Blacks and how big, and I think they won it that year, but how big a deal rugby was. Yeah.
Well, Ireland beat the All Blacks, I think, for the first time in New Zealand they only ever won once. When then they went and beat them last year. I keep thinking we're in 2022. They went and actually won a series over there, which they'd never done. They'd only ever won one actual match, So
that's awesome.
Yeah, they are really, really, really. And I don't say this as a huge rugby fan, but they're a fantastic team.
No, you actually got my interest. I might actually check out that game on the 18th, see if I could see it online or start rooting for him a little bit.
Come on, the boys in green will be the phrase,
So is there going to be like JC Mortgage sponsorship for the Irish rugby? Is it going to be on their
No, I as I said,
or whatever you call it?
I'd be more of a Gaelic fan, so I don't want to I don't want to just be one of these guys jumping on a bandwagon,
Good man. All right, John, now on the Tea and Mortgage podcast, we're going to cover a question that a lot of foreigners and expats who are moving to Ireland have. A lot of people probably are Googling this, and that is, can foreigners actually own real estate in Ireland?
Well, Norm, that's an excellent question. And, well, in short, the answer is yes, absolutely. It does, like everything else, come with a few extra curricular activities that are required, or in other words, small red tape. But as it stands, I would say about 70% of all my clients aren't Irish. Okay, so that might
70%.
70% of all my clients are not Irish. Okay.
Wow.
One of my colleagues, Soya, who we must get on to have a chat with you one of the days. She's been with me now for 7 years. She is from Brazil, and literally one of her core markets is the Brazilian people over here. The Brazilian nationality over here, and there's lots and lots of them, and she's been able to help a lot of them. So from a Brazilian point of view, that's one nationality that we have. Well, I think we're the only broker in Ireland that are servicing exclusively the Brazilian population with a native Brazilian. But that just happens to be lucky, and she's brilliant at what she does. So it's one market. But thanks to yourself, I have a bit of a good reputation among the American expats that are here. And
I'll do my best to muddy your reputation. Believe me.
Well, I think what the term was the mortgage king, but we're not going to revisit that. Okay. But so I would have, and then I would have a lot of South Africans, believe it or not, that would be. I have apparently have developed a good reputation among their community, and each community seems to. They talk to themselves in effect, so they're all have come over, and then they form their own little community, and they kind of help each other and make recommendations as to who's good for a particular thing. So we would then help a lot of people from India, we would help a lot of people from Pakistan, and then they'd be kind of them. If I was to kind of group them, there would be Brazilians, Americans, South Africans, Indians, and Pakistan. They'd be the 5 core nationalities that we'd have. Now there'd be others as well, such as they're all kind of
others in Europe too, like a lot of other European countries,
absolutely.
Right?
But there is a difference between European and non-European, and really what I view, the way the banks view the individuals is, are they European? Then they get treated in one regard. And in relation to your question, I'm kind of focused on the non-European people. Okay, and this is the piece of information that's really, really important for them. Okay, in theory, once you arrive in the country, if you're working for 6 months, one of the banks will actually lend to them. Okay. However, they will only lend 80% of the cost price. So it would mean that they'd have to bring 20% to the deal themselves. Okay. There are other banks that will lend non-Europeans 90%, but they would need to be working for a full year. Okay. So there's a big difference. So suddenly, if you've only got the 10% available, well, you're going to have to wait another 6 months before the banks that will lend 90%, because some of the banks will only lend 80% for people, but they have, as long as they haven't been here for 2 years. So there's there is a bit of a significant breakdown. But 1 year really is the goal, is the kind of, in the main, the people who are non-European would need to be working before we could get a bank to say yes, because most people tend to need the 90%. But if they don't, it could be done after a 6 month period. Okay?
And even if I could jump in, even when you're coming to a new country, 6 months goes by so fast. 1 year goes by so fast. So that's not a huge hurdle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's incredible. Like, I have nothing but incredible admiration for anyone who's arriving in the country within 3 months and suddenly getting in touch with me, say, John, I want to buy a house, right? And then when you arrive in the country 3 months, and I'm going, have you not experienced the Irish weather yet? Surely you're thinking this is not where we want to be. But no, in the main, anyone that's coming over, it seems to be the view in the main is they want to settle here, and they ultimately want to buy their own home, which is a great testament, I suppose, to the Irish economy, or the Irish way of living, because it certainly isn't the weather, that's for sure.
And a lot of people come over for work, I assume, and so they're probably pretty well set up, huh?
Yeah, you would find out they will be going kind of very well paid jobs, so that like there are a lot of opportunities for expats in Ireland from a career point of view and from a salary point of view. So they are being well paid, and ultimately they see themselves staying here. So their next logical step is to settle down and get roots here. So, but as you rightly point out, a year in a foreign country isn't really that long. I always start the conversations a year to 6 months out anyway. So I'm always willing to get someone give them the roadmap so that they know when they're ready, that they're ready. They're not
getting their bank accounts all set up. And
everything's in good order. So they're not losing more time so that they get themselves ready for the earliest point whereby the banks will say yes to them.
That's great. And so with foreigners as well, when they purchase, are there any other limitations, not just necessarily the mortgage, but actual owning real estate freehold, or what they could buy, or where they could buy it?
No discrimination on that front, thank God. It's purely, and maybe I use that word wrongly, but it's literally they'll be dealing with their own solicitor. They're buying the property as anyone else would be.
That's great. That's a huge advantage, both for them and for, Ireland and for what you do, because as I mentioned to you before, a lot of countries have restrictions where, let's say, you could buy, they say you could buy air, not dirt. You could buy a condo, but you can't actually buy a house on land. Or,
that's interesting.
Yeah, a lot of them do that.
Sorry for going across you. And one thing the Americans in particular find very weird about our setup system, back in the US of A, as they call it, they would have what they call a realtor, whereby a realtor would go and find them 5 or 6 houses and ultimately find them a home. In Ireland, and this can become a bit of a culture shock to them, no such system exists. Basically, the estate agent, which is the realtor in Irish language, in effect, works for the person selling the house. So no one gets any special attention. It's 10 people could be looking for the one house, and there's another house and it's a different estate agent selling it. So it's a bit of a culture shock to them, because they're suddenly, they feel at lost. There's no one actually helping, and I'm sure there's a market there in some shape or form for this over here, but there's no one actually helping an individual find a home. They're kind of relying on themselves to make that happen.
Yeah, that is, since we've been working together, You've told me about that, and I've learned about that, and that is, like sort of head scratching from an American point of view. But
Yeah.
And my question would be, okay, when it comes to negotiating, like, are you negotiating against yourself, or you don't, if that person's representing both parties?
And I have done a video on that actually in relation to bidding strategy, because and I probably won't go into it in too much detail, but here you're going to have the psychology of your own psychology, fear of losing, or don't want to pay too much. You're going to have the psychology of the actual seller, wanting to get as much as he possibly can. But then you also have the psychology of the agent. Okay, the agent wants to, in truth, sell any property as quickly as he possibly can, while at the same time presenting it to the client or his client that he's getting the best price for the property as can. So if you can work that to your advantage, but it is a very daunting experience for someone who's never bought a house before and then doesn't have anyone actually working on their side. It's suddenly you put a bid in and you're kind of going, well, this guy comes back and says another 5,000 down. You're going, it's kind of a vacuum. There's a layer of trust hasn't been built, because in truth, the agent he's not being paid by the people buying the house. He's being paid by the people selling,
No, that's interesting. And that's also, I think it's why it's invaluable what you do, because of course you provide the mortgage piece of the puzzle, but I know you, personally and professionally, and you just love helping, answering questions, guiding people, even if it's not your job or you don't get paid for it. So yeah, I think you're a good resource for any foreigner who wants to buy in Ireland.
Well, I hope so, and I would obviously include Soya in that as well, especially with the Brazilian that we're helping, because there's a big Brazilian community here as well.
You have about a Brazilian of them, huh? Sorry, that was a horrible joke. Sorry.
That was so corny.
I'm not editing that out. I
was going to just say you've got to edit that out. That's going to make us. Don't worry, it's on you, not on me. So I'm going to call you on that very quickly. By the way, you got there just in time.
Well, we definitely have to have your superstar Soya on the podcast next episode, huh?
Absolutely. Now she might balk at the idea when I say it to her, but we'll see if we can make it happen. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to episode number 3 of the Tea and Mortgage podcast, here with my good friend Norm. Hopefully you got some value from this, and obviously, as always, if you have any individual queries, don't be afraid to reach out. Thanks again.